Hey guys, and welcome to Betwixt the Books. We are here with our first review for the year. It is also us completing that first challenge on our list of reading and reviewing an arc on time. Nailed it. Today we're going to be talking about Midnight Ruin, which is the sixth, seventh,
Sixth. Depends on how you count Stoneheart, I guess.
Yeah, if that one's a 0.5 or not.
Yeah.
Sixth book in the Dark Olympus book series, which, if you didn't know, is Katee Roberts' retelling of a bunch of Greek myths. This time we're doing Orpheus and Eurydice, but also Charon slash Chiron is there. A note, I'm probably going to say Charon the whole time because that's how my brain reads and says that. Gretchen's probably going to say Chiron, and she's probably correct. I don't know. I was telling her that I think it's because of the Hades video game. I think they say Karen in that, and so that's why my brain sticks with that. But I do feel like most people say Chiron. So if I'm saying it weird, I'm sorry. Blame Hades, the video game. It's great. But we have a trio. I'm going to let Gretchen do a better sort of overview of the plot of this one. But be aware, again, this is like the sixth book in a series. So if you haven't read the previous ones, like there might be some spoilers for those. Although we will talk a bit about how we feel like this one is compared to like if you wanted to just jump in.
Hey, there's 100% about to be spoilers, even in my summary, because the thing about this trio, it's very important to the events of the first book, Neon Gods, which I reviewed, and we have reviewed jointly every single book since then. So again, you can go back and you can watch those. But like, this is a key building block book. So spoilers ahoy. Okay, if you're still here. So back in the first book, Orpheus and Eurydice were together, and Orpheus was a dick. And he was a playboy. He really was just like a very terrible boyfriend. And Eurydice was just really into him and was kind of being used by him a little bit. And that all kind of culminates when Orpheus is asked by the old Zeus to kind of drop Eurydice in a place, get her to go there so that she can be a trap for Hades and Persephone, who are the couple who are the beginning of the first book. So, needless to say, when Eurydice is saved and everything is like, fine, she realizes that she has been put in literal danger by the boy she thought loved her. And she says goodbye. And she basically moves into Persephone's place in the underworld or the lower city to try to heal. She's very broken by this. I think this was like her first real relationship that had gone on for a while. And so this is just like total and utter devastation. Throughout the last couple of books, Eurydice and Orpheus have popped in a few times. Orpheus was still a dick in book 2. You see him briefly. And all of them show up in book 4, which is Apollo's book, because you see that Eurydice is getting close to Hades' second in command, Chiron. They're both at the house party in that book. And Orpheus in that one, we think it's that one, we're not sure exactly, gets cut off by Apollo, who is his brother, and has to like go learn how to be a decent person without all of his money and riches and that kind of a thing. And so, leading up to this book, this is all very important because Eurydice and Chiron have been pining for a very long time. It's been 6 books, which in Romance Landia is forever. And they kind of have some things happen in the beginning of this book where they start to think maybe we should be in a relationship. Like they literally are already at the I love you stage. Like they are already there. It's happening.
Yeah.
But Eurydice says, listen, I still have feelings for Orpheus. I don't know how to get over him. And I don't know if I can give you all of me until I like get closure on that. And Chiron is like, okay, I'm gonna go to his house without asking you and tell him that he needs to like fix this so that we can be together. Um, and then Orpheus promptly appears in the lower city at the same time Eurydice and Chiron are having their first round of sexy times in their car. And it's a whole thing. So needless to say, Pink comes back in this book. This is the lower city after all. Those tend to be the kinkiest books for whatever reason. We know the reason, it's the underworld. Anyway. And so instead of being like, yes, let's have a conversation and have our closure and blah, 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 Eurydice says to Orpheus, "You want to apologize? You can beg. You can have penance. Here's your safe, pick a safe word, and get on your knees and clean my floor." So yeah, kink is back in this one, and let me tell you, if you didn't notice from me already saying sexy times happening in the car as like an inciting incident, this book is very spicy. Definitely spicier than some of the other ones. And, needless to say, they kind of roll into a poly relationship. Also happening at the same time, though, the barrier continues to fail. There are gunfights in this one, there is shooting. Things are finally really starting to happen in this book. And so while they're trying to figure out their life, they're also literally under attack. So there's a lot going on.
Gretchen's going to talk more about the plot and how we felt about that one in here, but I'm going to talk about the romance a little bit. This is another poly romance. I think this is the third poly one in the series, if I'm correct.
Yes, because there was book 3, and then the last book was 4 of them.
Okay.
Yes, so the third one.
Yes, it is the third book with poly, folks. It is the first time we get a poly relationship without hate sex. Love that. Woo! Yeah. Every single sex scene, not that hate sex isn't consensual, but it is more less dubious. Let's just say that.
It is also not our thing.
Yeah, not our thing. Not a big fan of the hate sex, but glad to see that happening. I did also want to say that because these characters have sort of existed for so long in the series, they were introduced very early on, you get a better feeling with the romance that the emotions involved are justified. You get a little bit of a second chance romance thing happening with Orpheus and Eurydice, where you get to see why their relationship fell apart, and you get to see sort of how they've grown and changed over the time since that happened and what it looks like going forward for how their relationship needs to change. You get to see the resolution of the pining that was happening between Karen and Eurydice the whole time that they were together, because that was even a little bit evident in some of the scenes that they had been in previous books. So it didn't feel unearned, the emotional value. We did also mention that the two guys, because this is the first time that they're interacting with each other, there is an emotional scene where they decide to be a trio, and they don't say that they love each other after being together for like 2 days, but they both agree that they have the potential to love each other. Like, they like each other's personalities, they like certain core values that the other person has, and they agree that that is a basis that they could find love, and they're willing to like try, which we both appreciated, because it didn't feel like an unearned, all of a sudden we love each other in the same way that has happened in some of the previous books in this series. On top of also not feeling like the pining was not really felt like some of the other books in the series. Like, so the problems that we've had with some of the elements involved here didn't happen in this particular book. Yeah, the romance was really solid here. So it's what we've come to expect from Katee. It's always really good. There's sexy scenes throughout between 2 or 3 of them. The return of the kink is nice, although we will both say that it is like a low volume kink. She posted a thing, I think, on Instagram that said that there was going to be puppy play, and Gretchen was like, "Dear God, no." But it's, if you're like scared off by that, I wouldn't be, because it's not as there's no collars, there's no eating out of bowls, just sort of the generic crawl around, please. You don't get to walk. You don't deserve to walk. And a little bit of denial. I will say
also only for about like 24 hours.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of
they just kind of use you're my dog or good boy like a little bit after that, but it's not to the level that you would think with puppy play being labeled that hard.
And I've definitely read like stronger like kink books in that area like before. And so I knew what to expect, and I knew what it could have been. And not that it's not my kink, but at the same time I was like, make him like grovel more. Like, I feel like after what he did, the fact that, and I understand there's other things happening in the plot, which we'll talk about, but I was just kind of like, no, what I come for in this second chance is I want to see him grovel. Get back on your knees.
Yeah. He definitely is the one who's mad at himself the most. And I think that also helps to sort of absolve him a little bit in the reader's eyes, because it's like, okay, yeah, no, the other two are like, all right, okay, we'll forgive you, I guess. Just do better, like keep doing better. And he's like, I feel like this is unearned. Like, you should definitely hate me. And we're like, yeah, we're with you, bud. You definitely do need to grovel a little bit more. So yeah, I wanted to say too, just about the romance in general. I've talked about the poly elements in some of the other books, and I feel like this one out of all of them really highlights what I think can be really beautiful in poly relationships, which is that you get these two separate relationships that Eurydice has with each of these guys that is kind of flawed and missing things. But when you create the trio and bring this all together, it creates a stronger general relationship, because not everybody can be everything for somebody. And a lot of people get those relationship boosts out of platonic relationships through friendships and stuff like that, because our partner can't be our be all end all, our only person. But for some people, poly relationships really strengthen the romantic relationships you have between every member in the group. And I think that that was really highlighted here in this book too. So if you're looking for positive poly, that's here. It's a good one. I would recommend it.
And I feel like the thing about the last book, where there was 4 of them, and also not all of them were in relationships with each other.
Yes.
I feel like in the second half of the book, that was also really, really well done.
Yes.
And really, but it was just like, that felt slightly unearned based on the first half of the book. And so while I feel that that might have even been more distinct in the last book, because of the fact that it felt unearned, it felt weird. Whereas in this one, it feels far more earned, which just as a romance reader in general, that's what we're here for, right?
Yeah.
Build a relationship, watch them fall in love, watch them figure it out, and like find how they fit. And this book definitely does that holistically better throughout. Another thing that this book does better is plot. And we have had feelings before of some books where we were like, was there anything else happening there but the sexy sex? Yeah. Like, was there anything? And then we also have had books where we were like, I think the series forgot that it was a romance series, because they've just been like having a murder mystery moment or whatever. And so there have definitely been books in this series where it has been less even. And I definitely felt, particularly in the last couple of books, because they had to establish relationships or certain other, like in the last one, we finally get to see what's going on in like this like quartet of people that came out of nowhere and are like mucking things up. But in the last couple of books, they've been like, the barrier is failing, things are bad, someone's doing this, we don't know who. And that's just kind of like been the thing in all of the books. And I was like, okay, we've got to start, like, something's got to start moving, happening. Like, you know, the stakes don't really feel that high, because it just kind of feels like you've been in the same place plot wise as we've been like introducing all these characters. And this book just goes boom off with the sexy sex, establishes the relationship, and then also establishes stakes. There are, you know, like I said, is a big gunfight at, you know, certain points in this book. There are things being attacked. Someone is clearly like coming for people, and you also finally realize who it is. And obviously I'm not going to spoil it, but I did like Hermes's comment. Like, I felt it as a reader a little bit, where Hermes was like, finally, I thought I was gonna have to send a carrier pigeon. And I like felt that, honestly, as a reader. I was like, okay, really feels like we know who it is and where they're coming from and why they're doing it. And so it really felt like this book had a really excellent mix of the plot, the relationship still feeling earned. It wasn't like kind of stuck against the plot or being buried by the plot. And it also didn't bury the plot. Like, you found out really important things and things are clearly escalating. So as we move towards like the back end of the series where things really have to start exploding, it just felt really, I felt reinvigorated in the series of like, oh, things are happening. Yeah. And it's not just like, you know, so it just felt as like a plot romance book, things happening, good romance. It was just like very satisfying.
We did want to mention, and I kind of talked about it at the beginning, that this book, more than some of the previous books, felt like it was recapping a lot of the previous books, or at least catching you up on the events of some of them. So if you haven't read some of these middling books, like if you read the first one, the second one, maybe even the third one, but not any of the like lesser known characters, lesser known myths that were going on there in the middle, you probably could skip over them and get to here, especially because they were not our favorite books in the series. Do we recommend that? Probably not, because there is still plot stuff that's going on, but I think you could do it and understand like where everything has come to at this point. It does a pretty good job of like re-explaining small events that have led to things as they come up. To the point where it was maybe a little bit annoying as someone who's read all of those books. But if the point was that they felt like if some people might want to skip, or they only read Neon Gods and now they want to read another book that's set in the underworld, or they're only interested in the ones that are very like leaning more towards the kink stuff because the other ones didn't really have that much kink in them, it does a good job of like trying to catch you up with what's been going on in the world outside of this book. So there's at least that too. So if you did want to skip over some of those other books that we were not as big fans of, you could. I still feel like it is important to read them to like get the gist of everything that's going on and to really see like all of these character movements, especially like the reason that these relationships felt justified is because we've seen bits and pieces of it in those past books. Like you may not feel that it's as satisfying to see Orpheus in this position, or to see the culmination of the pining between Karen and Eurydice if you haven't seen them over the course of like 4 other books. But you could theoretically plot wise and be fine.
Yeah, there was clearly something much stronger in this one trying to recap stuff. It definitely hits you right from the start and you're like, okay, I see what's happening.
Yeah.
But also, I was there. I know.
Yeah, yes, yeah, literally our feelings like, yeah, we know we read a whole book about this, but thanks for telling me again. All right, cool, moving on.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the best book I think since book 3
Yes.
for me.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I don't know it, and it's also funny because of what happens at the end of the last book where they step down, and you're kind of like, okay, so did we really need this one?
Yeah.
But you know, you also have to understand some of these characters for the books that are coming up too.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that's what you're gonna need for those to make sense.
Yeah. I think Katee has said that you could read the first 3 however you want and it would probably be fine, but after book 3 you need to read them in order because you're going to be missing stuff for character development, stuff for plot. And while I think this one does make an effort to make it so like if you did skip them you could, it definitely is a series that like has overarching plot in the whole thing, and you would want that.
So I do think we just have to mention that if you saw our last Katee Robert review, we went, what is happening here? This is not good. And I have to say that one was such a wild book of like, why is this happening? How is this happening? Why are these characters like this? What is it doing? That I did go into this book with a slight sense of trepidation because again, the last 2 books have not been as strong as the first 3, and it's the 6th book in a series. At a certain point, things can start to break down, and I was like, oh dear, was it? Oh dear, oh dear. So happy to report that this book, like we said, the romance is better, the plot is better. It kicks off, you start going. I literally read it in one sitting today because we needed to do this review. And it wasn't that I felt like that was a slog. It was like, even if we hadn't been reviewing today, I think I would have read it in one sitting because the plot was just like running and going and I was in it, except for this one moment. And Michaela and I both had this moment where Eurydice and Orpheus have gone off and they've like had a lunch date and they come back. And at some point, somehow, Chiron has redone an entire room upstairs in his townhouse and brought in all of the like new art supplies and like the fancy stuff. And I was reading that and I went, with what time? How and with what time? First of all, I'm pretty sure all of their movements have been accounted for. So I don't know when Chiron and Eurydice had this conversation that she says they had, in which Chiron asked her what art supplies Orpheus prefers to have. And I was like, okay, so when did that conversation happen? Because I'm not sure when it happened. And second of all, there is a war going on. There are guns in the street. Things are being destroyed. People are dying. And so I was like, first of all, why is this on Chiron's mind? He's second in command and head of security. He's busy. Second of all, did he let a stranger in the house? How did these things get here? How did this room get clean? Because it wasn't them. We know where they've been this entire time. And thirdly, why?
It's just so they could have one of those paint me like one of your French girl moments.
Yeah, that was definitely the one moment for both of us where we went, that was weird.
Yeah, when did you have time to do this? When did this conversation happen? Because I'm pretty sure we've been with all of you at the same time. Like, what? But
Yeah.
yeah.
But if again, after the last book that we read by Katee, where we just poked so many holes in it that it was like Swiss cheese, it was just really nice to have that one moment because I think having that one moment was the only reason I realized there was only one moment when I got
Yes.
pulled back because otherwise I would have just read it and I was like, perfect, fine. I maybe might not have even noticed, but
Yeah.
having that one moment where I was like, oh, but this is the only thing, and therefore I don't care.
Yeah, yeah. There was a lot of everything else is good. Um, for those of you wondering, because obviously these are retellings of the classic myths, how the myth here was changed. Obviously, we've added in a third person to the Orpheus and Eurydice myth. It's not just the two of them. But the way that she fixes it, so it's a happy ending instead of the usual one, is that instead of him leading her out of the underworld, which would have been the idea here, that him Orpheus bringing her back to the upper city, to the echelons and whatever, out of the darkness. He's following her wherever she goes. And I think he literally says that at one point, that he's just following her lead wherever she goes. And by not being the one to lead, by not being the one to make decisions, he is saved from the heartache of being forever separated from her, which is cute and nice and satisfying if you know the myth. So we just wanted to say that like the twist on the myth was good. It was a good one. It was a good way to twist it because you don't have that thing at the end where you're like, is he gonna try and like force her to go back to the city? And then that's what's gonna lose her. But it's a happy ending. It's a romance. It has to be happy. So we have a play on the way that it originally was.
Well, and it made sense. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know until Michaela brought it up that I had even clocked that as like a thing.
Yeah.
Because the way that it happens is just what makes sense for the book and for the characters and for
Yeah.
everything that has happened. Unlike in the Cassandra and Apollo book, where the twist on the myth, they kept bringing it up, and I was like, "Stop! This doesn't make sense. Like this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Stop doing it. It doesn't make sense." So yeah, I had not clocked it until Michaela brought it up, and I was like, "Oh my god, you're right." Because I was just like, again, it made sense. It made sense for the characters and the plot and where the books need to go. So I was just like, yeah, of course that's what happens.
Love it. All right. Yeah, that's our review of this one. We get to go to Ariadne and the Minotaur next time, which is already available for us to download, but we will probably not be reading until much closer to its release date, in about 6 months. They're usually about 6 months apart. So get ready for that. We'll definitely be back. If you haven't seen all of our reviews on the other ones, recommend it. Do you feel like you would recommend this one to folks?
Yes, this gives
Yes.
me much. I was a little worried after the last two books about where this series was going, but I feel like now that we're out of like a little bit of a middle doldrums, like things are starting to happen, and some of the relationships, like Ariadne and the Minotaur, they've been building that one up.
Multiple
Um,
books. Yeah.
and eventually we'll get to like Zeus and Hera, which has been something that I think from like the second book I've been like, I need this book, guys. So that's in like 2 or 3 books, depending on how you count it. Um, so I feel like there are some really excellent couples that have had the same thing where like this one, where it's been building over a number of books, and we'll finally get to see that, as well as the finale like coming closer and things really starting to happen. So I feel much more confident in this series. And I mean, I should have been. It's Katee again.
Yeah.
Not really. We've had the one bad one. But again,
Yeah.
with a series that is like 10 books long, things happen. It's a lot of books. So I'm excited to see where it goes. We will also be back with another Katee series, which is that we have decided to read the next book in the Hunt on Dark Waters series because we felt so strongly that the second book is really the book that Katee wanted to write, and the first one was unfortunate fluff.
Yeah.
So we are going to be giving that one a second chance. So obviously we'll be doing other reviews. We have our buddy challenge. If you haven't seen that yet, you can go see what we're reading and join us on Storygraph if you're interested. But you can count on at least 2 more Katee Robert reviews from this channel in the year 2024. So we will see you for those.